Welcome back to Changemakers, the podcast where we explore the critical elements of organizational development and change. I'm your host, Dr. Obi Paul Byram, and today we're diving into Chapter 7, Designing Interventions. This chapter is all about how we create specific actions and events that can help an organization improve its effectiveness. So, let's imagine a company facing an efficiency crisis. Production is lagging, employee engagement is low, and customers are starting to take notice. Leadership decides to bring in an OD practitioner who designs a series of interventions to address these issues, including process restructuring, team building exercises, and leadership redevelopment programs. 6 months later, the company's production is back on track, employee morale is higher, and customer satisfaction has improved. Today, we'll explore how well-designed interventions like these are crucial to driving meaningful change within the organization. So, let's start by defining what interventions are and why they're so important to driving change. An intervention in the context of OD refers to any planned, sequenced action or event designed to improve an organization's effectiveness. Now, the primary goal of an intervention is to address issues identified in the diagnostic phase and initiate meaningful change. These interventions could focus on various areas, including improving interpersonal relationships, restructuring workflows, or even aligning business strategies with external market factors. Now, think of interventions as the tools we use to move an organization from where it is to where it needs to be. Without a well-designed intervention, diagnosing problems alone wouldn't lead to any real progress. Segment 2, Types of OD Interventions. In this chapter, we'll explore 4 major types of interventions that address different organizational needs. First, human process interventions. These focus on improving interpersonal relationships and group dynamics. An example could include team building exercises, conflict resolution strategies, and process consultation. Now, the second is called technostructural interventions. Wow, that's a mouthful. Now, these focus on improving organizational structures and the technology that supports them, such as job design, reengineering, and TQM, total quality management. The third type is called human resource management interventions, HRM. Now, these align talent management with organizational goals through leadership development, performance management, and diversity initiatives. Lastly, strategic change interventions. Now, these are large-scale interventions focused on aligning the organization with its external environment. Now, this could be mergers, acquisitions, and organizational redesign. Each intervention serves a special purpose, and the key to choosing the one that best fits the organization change is the challenge at hand. Segment 3, Designing Effective Interventions. Now, when designing interventions, it's important to ensure that they meet 3 key criteria: relevance, valid information, and internal commitment. What's relevance? Relevance is the intervention must directly address the diagnosed issues. For example, if the problem is poor communication between departments, a human process intervention like team building might be appropriate. Second is valid information. The design of an intervention should be based on accurate, reliable data. Without valid diagnostic data, the intervention might target the wrong problem or fail to address the root cause. Let's look at internal commitment. Now, the success of any intervention depends on this commitment of the organization's members. Leaders and employees need to be engaged in the process and motivated to make the change work. Segment 4 is contingencies related to the change situation. Well, let's consider the external factors that can influence how interventions are designed. One key concept in Chapter 7 is that contingencies related to the change situation, such as cultural values and economic conditions, play a critical role in determining which interventions work best. For instance, in a culture that values hierarchy, a top-down approach to intervention may be more effective. In organizations that promote participative decision-making, involving employees in the design of the intervention might lead to better results. Similarly, the economic context is crucial. During an economic downturn, interventions focused on efficiency and cost reduction, such as downsizing or re-engineering, may be necessary. Now, in contrast, during times of growth, organizations may focus on leadership development or strategic expansion. Segment 5, contingencies related to the target of change. Well, we also need to consider the target of change when designing interventions. Interventions can target individuals, teams, processes, or the entire organization, and each level requires a different approach. For example, if the target of change is individual employees, interventions like coaching, performance management, or leadership development would be most appropriate. For teams, team building exercises or process consultation may be the focus. Now, when the intervention targets the entire organization, such as during mergers or large-scale restructuring, strategic change interventions are necessary. They're necessary to align the organization's structure and strategy with the external environment. By carefully considering both the change situation and the target of change, we can design interventions that are not only effective, but also sustainable. Now, to summarize, designing effective intervention is at the heart of driving organizational change. Whether you're focused on human processes, technology, strategy, the intervention needs to be relevant, based on valid information and generative internal commitment. Well, as we wrap up today, think about a challenge you faced in your own organization. If you could design an intervention to address that challenge, what would it look like? Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. The key is tailoring the intervention to the unique needs and context of the organization. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Changemakers. Stay tuned for our next episode, Managing Change, where we'll explore how to implement these interventions and measure their impact. This episode of Changemakers was based on Chapter 7 of Organizational Development and Change by Cummings and Worley, 11th edition, published by Cengage. Music is provided by Audio Coffee, and this podcast is developed with the assistance of ChatGPT, an AI tool used to help develop the podcast script. Now, until next time, keep making change.